So this is my inquiry video thingy thing. So Grandad, when Claude went off to World War One, do you know how old he was?
I think he was about 21.
Okay, so he was like, so he wasn't one of those people that lied about their age, was he?
No.
Do you know like what countries he went to in the war?
Initially they went to Egypt, then they went to Gallipoli, then he went to Scotland to do some training for a while, and then he went to the Western Front in Europe.
Oh yeah, so he went to quite a lot of places, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. How did Claude feel about going to the war and the war in general?
Well, initially, I think he was very enthusiastic about it. He was a volunteer in the Auckland Regiment, but as time went by, like many New Zealanders, he became disenchanted with what was happening in Western Europe on the Western Front, because they just seemed to be making 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or 1.5 steps back, so they weren't going anywhere.
It wasn't really what people expected, was it?
No, it wasn't. They all expected they'd be home by Christmas, and that was a joke.
Oh yeah. Do you know anything about the medals he received at the end of the war?
Well, look, they were standard medals that were given to most men that served without getting into trouble, if you know what I mean. The one thing that's different is the Anzac Medal, the Gallipoli Medal.
Oh yeah, the really big one.
The really big one. That was given only to those people that landed at Gallipoli.
Oh really?
Yes.
So that's quite a special one, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It's got his name engraved on the back as well, so...
Yes.
Yeah, you can tell it's a very important one, that one. Did Claude tell you any stories?
Pardon?
Did he tell you any stories?
Yes, he did. The New Zealand and Australian troops were very strict in dealing with the Arabs who came into their camp and stole food and equipment. And I'm sorry to have to say, but one night an Arab came in and killed one of the soldiers on guard duty. So a whole company of men set out and tracked them down and took revenge. That's the sort of thing that happens in war from time to time. It's not to be commended, but it's unrealistic to expect otherwise.
Yeah. Did he tell you anything else?
No, but after the war, he came back and he lived in Hawke's Bay and we lived in Napier, and he talked very little about it, other than to say that the real problem with the war...
Did Claude receive any other serious injuries during the war?
What he received most were shrapnel wounds, and his back and shoulders and even part of his neck at the back were covered in pock marks, it looked like, but in fact they were bits of shrapnel embedded under the skin well into the flesh, and they took the best part of 30 years to come to the surface. And I remember well him sitting in our kitchen in Napier. He had a razor sharp little penknife, and he would sterilise it and then use the knife to cut his shoulder and prise out a bit of shrapnel, or he'd get my mother to do it on his back. And some of the pieces were as big as a fingernail.
Wow. That's did he get a lot of those at Gallipoli, or were they from other places?
Most of them were at Gallipoli, because they were involved more, pardon me, in training new troops in the Western Front, and certainly when he was in Scotland, they were just training other troops that had come back from New Zealand. So it was all Gallipoli, he said.
Oh yeah. Did Claude fight in World War Two?
Well, only to the extent of being in the Home Guard. And he complained long and loud about what he regarded as buffoons running the Home Guard in New Zealand. These were people who had no military experience, but they maybe worked in a bank or an insurance company, and so they were made officers in the Home Guard. Whereas he and several others who had served in the First World War, they got very agitated when they were told what to do, but they did it anyway.
Did he make any friends during the war that, like, friendships that continued on later in life?
Not that I'm aware of. No, he never spoke of anyone in that light at all, Grace.
Oh, really? That's sad.
I rather suspect, although I do not know, that whatever friends he made probably suffered the ultimate fate.
That's so sad.